I broke down crying when I found out my sister got promoted while I was still struggling, so I told people what I believed she did to get ahead, aka sleeping to the top. Now she's destroyed my future by canceling my tuition and turning the whole family against me. My sister and I are close in age. Same parents, same schools growing up, same expectations drilled into us. On paper, we should have turned out the same. We didn't. She has always been the one who lands on her feet. Things line up for her in a way that looks effortless from the outside. Internships appear at the right time. People want to mentor her. Promotions come early. There's always someone older and more established willing to vouch for her. I've had a very different run. I'm not lazy, despite what some people in my family like to imply. I've struggled academically in ways she never has. I've had to retake courses. I lost a part-time job earlier this year that I relied on to cover basic expenses. My tuition isn't something I can just pay myself. It's funded through a family trust that's overseen by my aunt and uncle, with conditions attached. It's always been clear that the money is there as long as I'm on track and not embarrassing anyone. Things were already tense before this blew up. I had just failed an exam that I really needed to pass. I hadn't told everyone yet, but people could tell something was off. Then we had a family dinner. Nothing fancy, just one of those obligatory get-togethers where everyone pretends they aren't constantly comparing each other. That's where my sister announced she'd been promoted. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Praise, pride, jokes about how she was clearly doing something right with her life. I don't think anyone set out to hurt me, but it was one of those moments where you feel invisible while sitting at the same table. Someone made a comment about how hard work pays off if you make smart choices. Another person asked me, in front of everyone, how school was going and whether I was finally narrowing my focus. I didn't say much. I smiled, nodded, did what I always do. Later, when people had moved to another room, I just lost it. Not in a dramatic way. I cried in the bathroom like an idiot, hoping no one would notice. Someone did. I was asked what was wrong. I tried to brush it off. I was pushed to explain why I couldn't just be happy for my sister. So I said what I've believed for a long time. I said I didn't think her promotion was just about merit. I said I thought she slept with someone higher up to get ahead. This wasn't something I pulled out of nowhere in a fit of rage. It's been a suspicion I've had for a while, based on patterns I've seen and things that never quite added up. The mentor relationship that went way beyond normal, the late nights, the private projects that no one else seemed to be allowed near, the way she was suddenly fast-tracked while others were passed over. I wasn't presenting it as a proven fact, but as something I believed was likely, and honestly, something I thought other people had already considered but were too polite to say. I didn't scream it across the table. I didn't make a scene. I said it in a small group after being pushed to explain why I was upset. I also made it clear I wasn't trying to destroy her career. I said I was tired of pretending everything was fair when it clearly wasn't. The reaction was mixed. A few relatives looked shocked and uncomfortable. A couple didn't say anything at all, which felt telling. Someone muttered that it wouldn't be the first time something like that happened in a workplace. Others were clearly angry that I would say something like that about my own sister. She didn't argue with me. She didn't deny it. She just left. I went home feeling shaky and embarrassed, but also strangely relieved. Like I had finally said the thing I wasn't supposed to say. I knew there would be fallout, but I didn't expect it to be this fast or this severe. Within days, I was told that my tuition payment was being paused. No warning, no discussion, just that the trust needed to review the situation. My aunt and uncle said it was about values and family. My sister hasn't spoken to me since that night. I'm being treated like I committed some unforgivable act, while the actual accusation itself isn't even being addressed. No one has asked me why I think what I think. They've just closed ranks. I still stand by what I said. I didn't expect my education to be put at risk over it. Any advice? Update 1. What's made everything worse is my sister's complete refusal to engage. She hasn't contacted me once. No angry messages, no denial, no demand that I retract what I said, nothing. She's gone completely silent, and somehow that silence has been louder than any fight would have been. If someone accused me of something that serious and it wasn't true, I wouldn't just disappear. I would shut it down immediately. The fact that she hasn't done that has only reinforced what I already believed. Meanwhile, everyone else suddenly has opinions. My parents sat me down and told me I needed to apologize. Not because they were convinced I was wrong, but because things were getting uncomfortable. They kept framing it as a strategic move. Say sorry, smooth things over, let everyone calm down, and the tuition issue would probably resolve itself. They kept saying I didn't need to mean it, just say it. I refused. I told them I wasn't going to apologize for pointing out something unethical just because it made people uneasy. That didn't go over well. They accused me of being stubborn and self-sabotaging, like I was choosing principle over survival on purpose. Maybe I am, but I also don't see how apologizing for something I believe would fix anything long-term. It would just confirm that I can be pressured into silence when money is involved. Since then, the distance from the rest of the family has been subtle but obvious. Messages that used to get responses now don't. Group chats have gone quiet whenever I post. When I show up to gatherings, people are polite but distant, like they don't want to get pulled into something radioactive. No one asks how school is going anymore. No one asks how I'm doing at all. I also found out, through my cousin who still talks to me, that my sister is considering legal action. Not because I posted anything publicly, but because of what I said to family members. Defamation was the word that got thrown around. That honestly made me laugh at first. I didn't state anything as a fact. I said what I believed. There's a difference. I'm not running a smear campaign. I'm not blasting this online with names and companies attached. I talked about something that directly affects my life, in a private setting after being pushed to explain myself. Still, the fact that legal threats are even being discussed tells me how seriously she's taking this behind the scenes. It also tells me how protected she is. Instead of anyone asking whether there's truth to what I said, the focus has shifted entirely to how dangerous it was for me to say it at all. The practical consequences are starting to set in now. If my tuition isn't paid by a certain date, I won't be able to stay enrolled. If I'm not enrolled, I lose my housing. That's not hypothetical. That's a timeline. I've started running numbers and realizing how little room I have to maneuver. There isn't a backup plan waiting for me if this falls apart. And here's the thing that people don't seem to understand. At this point, the damage is already done. Even if I apologize tomorrow, there's no guarantee the funding would come back. All I'd be doing is backing down without getting anything concrete in return. So instead of panicking, something in me has hardened. If my life is already being derailed, I'm not going to pretend this was all a misunderstanding just to make everyone else comfortable. Update 2. I've spent the last week trying to understand how my education was never as neutral as I was led to believe. I always thought my aunt and uncle were just administrators, keeping things fair and making sure funds were used responsibly. That's how it was explained to me growing up. What I found out instead is that my sister has been quietly positioned to take over managing parts of it in the future. Not officially yet, but everyone important already treats her like that's a given. Her career trajectory isn't just about her success, it directly affects the family's financial plans. Her promotion wasn't just good news, it was reassurance to the people who care about those assets that she's stable, respectable, and safe to bet on. That's why what I said didn't just embarrass her, it threatened something much bigger. Once I understood that, a lot of things started to make sense. A cousin let slip that there had been a meeting after the dinner, not a dramatic intervention, just a closed-door conversation between my parents, my aunt and uncle, and my sister. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even mentioned as someone who should be present. I was discussed, not included. What came out of that meeting is what I've been dealing with ever since. According to what I was told, I was framed as unstable, jealous, and reckless. Not someone who made a mistake while emotional, but someone who couldn't be trusted to act in the family's best interest. My comment wasn't treated as a concern to be evaluated. It was treated as evidence that I was a liability, something that needed to be contained before it spread. That's when the tuition decision stopped being about discipline and started being about protection. Not protecting me, obviously, protecting the family's image, the trust, and my sister's trajectory. Pulling my funding wasn't described as punishment, it was described as risk management. I decided to confront my aunt and uncle directly instead of continuing to speculate. I didn't go in angry. I didn't accuse them of favoritism. I asked a simple question. If what I said was so outrageous and harmful, why wasn't anyone interested in figuring out whether it was true or not? The answer I got still hasn't left my head. They told me intent mattered more than truth. They said that even if something unethical had happened, the way I handled it was unacceptable. That raising it at all, especially in a family setting, showed poor judgment. That my willingness to say it out loud was more concerning than whether it had any basis. In their eyes, the damage came from my behavior, not from the possibility that my sister's promotion wasn't as clean as everyone wanted it to be. That was the moment something cracked for me. Up until then, I was operating on pure anger and defensiveness. I was convinced that everyone was choosing my sister over me because she was more likable, more successful, easier to support. What I realized instead is that my place in this family was always conditional. My education wasn't an investment in me as a person, it was an investment in who they hoped I would become, as long as I didn't complicate things. I've also had to face an uncomfortable truth about myself. I don't actually have proof. I have patterns, timing, and resentment. I have a long list of things that felt unfair and unexplained, and I connected them in a way that made sense to me. That doesn't mean I know what actually happened behind closed doors at her workplace. I've sat with that realization longer than I expected to. I've turned it over again and again, trying to see if that means I should back down. Every time I come to the same conclusion. Even if I'm wrong, apologizing now wouldn't fix what's already been revealed. The money, the access, the support, all of it was contingent on me being quiet and compliant. Saying sorry wouldn't change that. It would just confirm that I understand my place. The consequences have started stacking up in real ways. Because my tuition is still on hold, I've been forced to withdraw from my classes. That immediately triggered issues with my housing, which is tied to enrollment. I've had to pack up parts of my life without knowing where I'll land next. Friends have noticed something is off, but the distance isn't because of my sister, it's because I'm tense, short-tempered, and clearly spiraling. People don't know what to do with that, so they pull back. I don't blame them. I probably would too. What I do know is this: saying what I said cost me more than I expected. But it also stripped away the illusion that I was ever secure here. I was useful as long as I didn't disrupt the narrative. The second I did, I became disposable. I still don't regret saying it. Even if I'm wrong, even if I let jealousy guide me more than I want to admit, it exposed how quickly I could be cut loose. That knowledge hurts, but it's also clarifying. Whatever happens next, I won't pretend this was just about one bad comment at a dinner table. Update 3. I didn't think she was ever going to talk to me again. After everything that happened, after the tuition cancellation and the way the family closed ranks, I assumed the silence was permanent. So when she asked to meet, it caught me off guard. There was no urgency in it, no emotion attached. It felt procedural, like something she had decided to check off rather than something she needed. She didn't open with feelings. She didn't even open with the accusation. She laid things out the way she does at work, which I've heard about from family for years. Structured, linear, almost boring. She went through her career path step by step, starting years back, long before the promotion that set this whole thing off. Internships, lateral moves, the projects she was assigned to that never made it into family conversations because they weren't flashy. Reviews, evaluations, timelines, the stuff no one pays attention to because it doesn't fit into a clean narrative. What struck me was how little she seemed interested in convincing me emotionally. She wasn't trying to make me feel better or worse. It felt like she was documenting something rather than arguing it. The mentor relationship I'd fixated on was explained in the same way. When it started, what it involved, who else was present, how it fit into the department. There were witnesses, there were records, there were people above both of them. She didn't say it in a defensive way. She said it like someone who had already explained this to lawyers or HR and didn't feel the need to embellish. At some point, I realized she wasn't actually there to clear her name in my eyes. She was there because this was the last loose end. I wasn't the judge. I was the variable. She acknowledged that she knew I was struggling. That part surprised me more than anything else. I'd built this story in my head where she was oblivious or willfully ignorant, floating above everything while I sank. But she knew. She just didn't think it was her responsibility to fix. She said she resented being made into the balancing weight for my life, where every success of hers was treated like a personal failure of mine that she was supposed to compensate for. That was when she explained the silence. She didn't ignore the accusation because she was guilty or because she didn't care. She ignored it because she was advised to, and because she didn't feel obligated to manage my reaction. She didn't want to get pulled into a back and forth that would turn my suspicion into a shared emotional problem. From her perspective, engaging would have validated the idea that I was owed reassurance. The moment that really landed wasn't dramatic. It was a simple observation that cut more than any insult would have. She said I wasn't actually interested in what happened. I was interested in restoring some sense of balance. If her success had an asterisk, then my failures felt less final. If she had cheated the system, then the system hadn't rejected me fairly. I don't think she meant it cruelly. That somehow made it worse. She also confirmed something I had suspected, but didn't want to hear directly. The tuition decision wasn't just the family reacting emotionally. She asked for it. Not as punishment, and not to ruin me, but because she no longer felt safe being financially tied to me. From her point of view, I had shown I was willing to say things that could damage her reputation when I felt cornered. Being linked through money and long-term obligations suddenly felt like a risk she didn't need to take. Hearing it framed that way shifted something uncomfortable into focus. I had imagined my accusation as a weapon that would level the field, expose cracks, force accountability. Instead, it had done the opposite. It reinforced the image of her as composed and credible, and me as unstable and reactive. The family didn't see someone speaking truth to power. They saw someone who couldn't handle losing and decided to lash out. By the end of the meeting, it was clear there was no path back to what we had before, not because she hated me, but because she no longer trusted me. Those are different things, and somehow that distinction hurt more. There was no threat, no ultimatum, no demand for an apology, just a boundary that had already been set and wasn't going to be moved. I left knowing I'd misread the situation from the start. I thought silence meant weakness. I thought proximity to power made her vulnerable. What it actually did was give her options and protection. My accusation didn't destabilize her position. It clarified it. Now I'm having to think in very practical terms. School is off the table for the moment. Family support is gone in any meaningful way. Whatever comes next has to be built without the assumption that someone will step in and smooth things over. I don't know what that looks like yet. I just know this wasn't a misunderstanding that can be talked through later. There's no reconciliation coming. There's just aftermath and figuring out how to live in it. Final update. This will probably be the last time I post about this. There's nothing left to escalate and nothing left to explain to the people involved. Whatever version of me existed before all this is gone, and the situation has settled into something quieter and worse, not explosive anymore, just permanent. I am no longer enrolled. That became official a few weeks ago. Once the tuition was gone, everything else followed in a very boring, administrative way. Emails, deadlines, forms I couldn't complete. No dramatic meeting where someone begged me to reconsider, just a system doing what it's designed to do when money disappears. I lost housing shortly after that because it was tied to enrollment. I packed what I could into a couple of bags and moved into a temporary place that belongs to a friend of a friend situation. It's not stable, but it's something. I'm working now. Not in my field, not even adjacent to it. It's the kind of job you take because it starts immediately and doesn't ask questions about gaps or family references. It covers food and a bit of rent. That's it. I'm tired most of the time, but not in a productive way. More like my body is still adjusting to the idea that this is my life now. As for my family, there isn't much to say. We don't talk, not because anyone formally cut contact, but because the effort only goes one way now, and I stopped being the one who tried. The silence feels intentional, like everyone agreed this would be easier if I faded out quietly. I've heard through indirect channels that the story being told is that I'm unstable, emotionally unsafe, and unpredictable. No one says outright that I lied, but no one defends me either. That middle ground is doing all the work. What I understand now is that proof never mattered. I could have been right or wrong and the outcome would have been the same. The accusation didn't need to be verified to be useful. It only needed to exist. Once it did, the family's priorities became very clear. The person who was bringing in future value was protected. The person who was costing resources was removed. It wasn't personal in the way people think personal means. It was practical. I've had time to sit with my own role in this, and I'm not pretending I was acting from a pure place. I was jealous. I was bitter. I had been swallowing comparisons for years and finally choked on them. I took suspicion and turned it into a weapon because I wanted something to break. I wanted the imbalance acknowledged, even if that meant burning things down. That part is on me. What I won't do is apologize publicly or recant to make other people comfortable. Not because I think I was morally right, but because I see now how conditional everything always was. My education wasn't support. It was an investment with expectations and exit clauses. My place in the family wasn't unconditional. It was provisional, dependent on how useful or manageable I was at any given time. The accusation didn't create that reality. It exposed it. My sister is fine. Better than fine. Her position is stronger than it was before, and the family is more unified around her now that there's a clear contrast. I don't think she set out to destroy me. And I don't think she lost sleep over the outcome either. She protected herself in a way the system rewards. That's the part people don't like to admit, but it's true. I'm not looking for sympathy. I know how this reads. I know people will say I did this to myself and they won't be wrong. I pulled the pin. I just didn't realize how much was wired to explode once I did. What I didn't expect was how quickly everyone would agree I was disposable. So this is where I'm at. No degree, no family safety net. A reputation that follows me quietly into rooms I'm not even aware of yet. I'm figuring things out day by day, without the illusion that fairness will show up if I explain myself better. It won't. I'm still not sorry for saying what I said. I'm sorry for the timing. I'm sorry for the way I said it. I'm sorry for assuming that truth, or even belief, had any power on its own. But I'm not sorry for refusing to pretend everything was fine just to keep access to money and approval.